on, guys? My name is Jamie Longo. I'm the Overdose Prevention Coordinator here at Community Health Action, and today we're going to be learning about the 4 behaviors we need to change. So if you like this presentation and you want to stay educated, please subscribe and you'll be notified every time a new video is posted. So let's get into it. Okay, so what we know so far is that we're in the midst of the world's worst drug epidemic in history. So that's no secret. We have a world crisis on our hands. We do all that we can internally, and we are also noticing and continue to notice that there are some external factors that are also contributing to this issue. There's factors in the midst of the epidemic, but there's also factors outside of this setting that is setting us up for failure. I'll discuss, in my opinion, what I believe the 4 biggest factors contributing to substance use and aren't helping the issue by any means. Is going to be parenting. Too many young adults and children grew up to failed parenting strategies. So now, before I explain, I'm not saying that a lot of parents are bad parents. Honestly, most parents are too good of parents, meaning that their love for their kids is so much that it's actually preventing them from important life lessons. What do I mean by that? So, for example, they were told they were special all the time. They were told that they can have anything in life just because they want it, and some kids got into honor classes not because they deserved it, but because the parents kept complaining to the teachers, and some kids got A's not because they deserved it, just because the teachers didn't want to have to continue to deal with the parents. This subject specifically really irks me because I'm an athlete, and the kids' participation trophy really bothers me, and for many reasons, and the studies behind it is actually rather clear. So some kids got participation medals when coming in last. So that's exactly what's going on here. They got medals for coming in last. The science on this is very clear. Participation medal devalues the medal and the reward for those who did work hard to achieve it, and it makes the person who comes in last feel embarrassed because they know they didn't deserve it, which makes them feel worse. So it actually doesn't do any good by doing something along the lines. These are important life lessons that your kids should be learning. You shouldn't be trying to shield them from pain and from lessons. This is the time for them to learn those things because it gets harder to deal with when you're an adult. So what happens next? Now these kids grow up, okay? So now we take this group of kids, they graduate, get a job, and they're thrusted into the real world. In an instant, they found out that they're not special. Their mom can't get them a promotion. You get nothing for coming in last, and you can't have something simply just because you want it. In an instant, their entire self-image is shattered. The result is an entire generation growing up with lower self-esteem than we've ever seen before. Now let's add technology into this mix, right? Because what possibly could go wrong with that? Technology into this mix. So our younger generation's growing up in this Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Twitter type world, and what I'm trying to kind of get by saying all that is that they're really good at filtering things. They're really good at making the world believe that they're happy and great, life is great, and realistically these kids are depressed internally and on the other side of that screen. It's come to a point where even when I take a photo of like say I'm taking a selfie or a photo of myself, if I don't have a filter on it, I don't necessarily like the way the photo comes out. It's crazy because we've now made this imagery in our heads that all of our flaws that make us who we are, even physical flaws, are no longer acceptable or feel like ugly. They feel ugly to a lot of people because they're a way to kind of Photoshop that in or fix that by just adding a filter. And we now perceive ourselves in a different light because of what these filters have done for us. We know engaging with social media on our phones releases dopamine. So that's why when kids get a text, it feels good. You hear that ding, dopamine released. It's as simple as that. So that's why when kids go on their, their social media, they're checking likes, the amount of likes that they're getting. This is why when, they're constantly checking how many people are following them. These are all small releases of dopamine that is causing these kids to kind of almost validate themselves based on how people like their photos or their content that they're trying to share. But the trauma for a kid who gets unfriended or who doesn't have as many likes as they did the day before, it's truly traumatic. And this is all because they're not getting that hit of dopamine. They don't know that. They don't understand what's going on in their brains, but they know that they feel less love for themselves when they're not getting as many likes on photos, when their phone's not blowing up as much as it used to, when people aren't constantly following them or they're not constantly gaining followers. So they don't realize that when they get that hit of dopamine, it feels good, and that's why they like it so much, not because of anything that's wrong with them. So dopamine is the same exact chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, we drink, we gamble, we take drugs, we have sex. It's all the same chemical that's being released. So in other words, it's highly, highly addictive. We have age restrictions on drinking and smoking and gambling, and we have no age restrictions on social media or cell phones. So if you add this into what I said before, you now have a generation that is addicted to the effects and numbing agents that dopamine provides as they're going through some of the high stress of their adolescence. That's not good. It's not, like, I don't know how else to say this, but that's probably the worst possible thing you can have go on. But let's see. Why is this important? Well, to me, I think it's important because almost every alcoholic discovers alcohol when they're teenagers. When we're young, we seek the approval of our parents. As we enter our teen years, we seek the approval of our peers, which is very frustrating for parents, but very important for us. We need to learn to cultivate outside of our immediate circle or our immediate family. What we're supposed to learn during that time is to rely on friends. Is to learn the important life lessons of disappointment and how to cope with it, or stress, how to cope with it, to learn to rely on people. And it's not happening that way. We're learning to rely on devices instead. Alcoholics may have turned to the drink of choice and the numbing effects of dopamine because of whatever stress they may be seeing at that time, and every time they pick up, it's becoming hardwired in their brain. So it's almost like you found an answer to a question that didn't have an answer before. So when you are doing that repeatedly, it's hardwiring in your brain. And once you have that hardwired, it's very hard to unlearn. Meaning, when they're stressed, they would always look to the bottle rather than someone else. So what we're seeing in the younger generation, without restrictions on dopamine producing devices, is that it's becoming hardwired the same exact way that it would with an alcoholic. Affect our kids as adults. When they grow older, our now younger generation, they don't know how to form deep, meaningful relationships due to the fact of what they practiced when they were in their adolescence. Deep, meaningful relationships aren't there because they haven't practiced the skill set, and what's even worse than that is that they don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. When significant stress starts to show up in their lives, they're not turning to a person or a friend. They're turning to a device or their social media, or anything in that matter that offers temporary relief. These things need to be balanced. Balance is what actually matters when it comes to anything like this. Alcohol isn't bad. Too much alcohol is bad. There's nothing wrong with social media and cell phones when they're balanced. It's the imbalance that actually causes anything to be dangerous. You can overdo healthy things. Going to the gym is healthy. It is very good for you. You overdo that and it can become extremely unhealthy for you and damaging and harmful. So let's recap where we're at so far right now. Now we have a generation growing up with the lowest self-esteem that we've ever seen. They don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. Now let's add how impatient our kids are nowadays. Patience. We have grown up in a world of instant gratification. You want something, you order it, it's at your house the next day, sometimes even the same day. You want to watch a movie, log on, watch a movie, watch the entire season. You don't have to check movie times anymore. You want to go out on a date, you don't even have to work up the courage to ask someone or even experience the uncomfortableness and or the lesson that comes with it that when you have to ask someone out. Now you just, to get a date, you just literally open your phone, open an app, and swipe right. Everything you can have instantaneously except two things. There's two very important things that you'll never be able to have instantaneously and there will never be an app for. The two things that'll never have instant gratification is job satisfaction and strength of relationships. Now, these are slow, uncomfortable, messy processes. What this generation needs to learn is patience. That some things that are really matter, like love, job fulfillment, joy, love of life, self-confidence, all these things, they take time. The worst case scenario is that which we're seeing so far is that this generation's suicide rate is higher than it's ever been. Accidental drug overdoses the rate of that is higher than it's ever been. Kids dropping out or taking a leave of absence due to depression is at its very highest too. Now, the best case scenario is you will have an entire generation growing up and just going through life and never actually finding true joy within it. They'll never find true, deep, meaningful fulfillment within life. They will just simply kind of pass through it and exist. Today's environment. So, we take this generation of kids that are amazing, they're fantastic kids, and they were truly just dealt a bad hand, and we put them into these corporate environments that care more about the numbers of the kids. It's sad, but a lot of, corporate America nowadays, they care more about the short-term gains more than the long-term lifespan of this kid or of their career. So we're putting them in environments that aren't helping them build their confidence. They aren't helping them learn the skill set of cooperation, and they aren't helping them overcome the challenges of living in a digital world and how to find balance within it. The worst part about that is that the kids blame themselves. It's crazy to think that someone could find blame within not finding job satisfaction. It's, because logically thinking, if you don't fit somewhere, you don't fit somewhere, but kids are finding it that they don't fit anywhere. Because one, they're walking into jobs, and after being there for a month, they wonder why they don't have their boss's job and why they're not making $1 million, and they don't feel like they feel at home. They don't know the patience, and they don't learn from the environment that they're in. That, those type of things take time. It's something you need to build. It's something that should be that our older generation should be instilling in this younger generation, helping them understand and develop. But the kids blame themselves, and it's not their fault. It's the environment that they've been put into, and it's the lack of good leadership in our world today. It's generations before them, and these companies teach responsibility to teach these kids the lessons they need. I think a good idea, way to start, take cell phones out of conference rooms. I know it doesn't seem like why would that matter, but it actually does, because it could actually make something, you could actually hit on a lot of these things by just taking that out and then using that simple factor. So when you get to a meeting, unless you're always late, but if you get to a meeting, you normally get there a few minutes before time. No one not the entire crowd really walks in at the same time. So if you get there a little earlier, maybe you're one of those type of people. By having a cell phone in the conference room, you're now taking away opportunity to have conversations with co-workers while you wait for the meeting to start. This is how relationships are built. It's like someone who has alcohol use. The reason you take the alcohol out of the house is because we cannot be trusted. We cannot trust our willpower solely. We're just not strong enough at the end of the day. But when you remove the temptation, it becomes a lot easier to not pick up. The constant switching to app to fill that in that time is where, rather than just sitting there and daydreaming or, possibly having that moment to not be overstimulated, that's when great ideas happen. Ideas happen when our mind wanders. Our mind is not allowed to wander with the amount of technology and overstimulating things that are surrounding us all day, every day. So when we're taking away those moments, we're actually even more so taking away potentially to potentially spark an idea that lands us in a scenario where we wish we were at that moment rather than where we are in our lives or in our job careers. Everything we talked about here today already. So just to kind of go over what I believe again and how this is all contributing. This generation is growing up with overprotective parent strategies, a digital disconnect and isolated world, more anxious and impatient than they ever have been before, and in a selfish, money-driven society that makes even the smallest dreams feel unrealistic or unreachable. These aren't bad kids. They've just been dealt a bad hand. Now, before we go into the next thing, I just want you to, now that you know, like, my opinion on the 4 things that really need to change, and how they're contributing, I kind of want you to ask yourself these questions. Are you truly surprised that we're in the middle of the world's worst drug epidemic? Drug use is surrounded by these 4 things. Enabling parents instant gratification, superficial emotions, and how to deal with them, and a lose-lose success turnover. Are you still surprised that suicide and mental health is at an all-time high? Technology has now allowed bullying to follow you home and no longer stays at school. The internet also offers a plethora of information, which is amazing if you're looking for something that is helpful to you or something that you want to learn that's going to better your well-being. The problem is that it also offers that same information to everybody that could be looking to harm others or themselves. And now they have the ability to kind of look up the easiest way to do that and how to do it as quick as possible. This part of it kind of really bothers me is that mental health is diagnosed off of symptom clustering. Doing brain scans is not financially profitable, so they literally are the only medical practice that make diagnoses without looking at the organ that they're treating. To me, that's mind-blowing that no one's making a bigger issue about this. You have something wrong with your heart, you go to a heart surgeon, they're going to look at your heart before they open you up or before they medicate you. If you go to, any other medical profession, they will look at these things through scans, through tests, and this medical practice, like mental health, it's the only one that's symptom clustering. Do you know how many symptoms that could possibly run into each other that can cause somebody to misdiagnose someone? It doesn't matter how much you update the DSM-5, or how many new mental healths you make, or versions of the one, or different varieties of the ones that are already made. You need to look at what's going on in the brain. You need to see what's firing off. You need those scans to give a better and more accurate diagnosis to somebody. And we're not doing it because it's not putting enough money in the pockets of the people who are doing it, or maybe even the insurance companies. And to me, that's mind-blowing, because some of these kids that are now harming others or themselves, they're savable. We're able to intervene and prevent these things from happening, and we're not doing it because of money. That's insane to me. That's insane. I don't understand why people are making an uproar about this more than just me, you know? Is this the world you really imagine for your child? So my whole life I've always dreamt of having a family of my own. And my biggest fear with bringing my kids into this world is exactly what I'm bringing them into. The world is only getting worse, and that is because too many people are conforming and not enough people are standing up for what they believe in. I can't tell you the countless number of people I talk to that have the same voice and opinion as me, but they choose not to share it because they're afraid to be different, afraid to be wrong, afraid to ask for what they really want. I mean, why do we go to school? So, and this may be a bit controversial, but this is what I believe. Why do we go to school, right? To become educated. But what did I truly learn in school? I learned my ABCs, I learned how to write, I learned basic math. Those are tools that I used in my everyday life, no doubt, undoubtedly. I can also say I think college is the biggest scam. I don't think you actually learn anything there. I think it just formulates your way of thinking. But college shaped my thinking more than it taught me anything. Nowadays, the scale once again has been raised. So you go to school and say you graduate from high school and you don't go to college. You pretty much did nothing with your life, because a high school diploma pretty much means nothing. It's the high school diploma has now become a GED. The associates now has become a high school diploma. A bachelor's is now an associate's, and you can't get a job and live comfortably without even having a master's. The best is that you can't even get a job without having experience in the field. When companies require kids with experience under their belts after they just freshly been graduated out of college, they aren't teaching kids that internships are important. What they're doing is teaching or telling these kids that if they want their dream job, they have to start by lying about it. What kind of foundation is that to build a career on? How many of you have lied on your resume to get a job? Every single job you take, no matter what kind of job it is, there is about a 2 to 6 week at most training process that you go through in order to learn how that company does that job. Because yes, you can have a base understanding from having previous experiences, but every company is different. Every organization is different. So why are we requiring even the most simplest tasks to have experience in order for somebody to get a job? If you're going to teach them it within the first 2 months of them being there anyway, it makes no sense. But let's go to the next one. We end this presentation. Are you happy with the way the world is that you're going to be leaving your loved ones behind in? Eventually we all die, that's no secret. Honestly, some of us can die tomorrow, some of us may die in 80 years from now. But regardless of the fact, are you comfortable with leaving your loved ones in this world when you're not going to be in it anymore? Are you even happy that this is the world that you chose, or that you're living in yourself? I mean, you only have one life. Is this the world that you wanted to live that one life in? Is this exactly how you imagined you living your life? Not even as a kid, but in general now. To me, in a sense, it feels like we're coming to almost like full circle of Darwin's theory of evolution. Survival of the fittest doesn't necessarily mean the strongest, but it seems like survival of the fittest in this case has been tainted to a survival of people with power. And it's unfair because that's not what the whole reason for this is. It should be what is going to progress the species, not in one case or another damage them and only make more of what it is. That's not how we progress as a species, and that's not how we've progressed up to this date. So how do you plan on changing something small today? Anything. Why don't you not go on social media for a day? Why don't you not pick up your phone during this hour? Why don't you be the leading example that you want your kids to see? Try practicing it in your own lives, and then try implementing very, very minute, small changes each and every day in your kids' lives. And I promise you, the more you try and the more you do it, the easier it will be to kind of rewire these hardwire responses that your kid has developed up to this point. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's doable, and nothing's impossible. Change is always possible, and that's the end of the story. Thank you so much for educating yourselves on this, and by all means, please stay tuned to whatever I put up next.